The United States is depicted as an upstander for justice and equality and a promoter of the American dream. Developing nations look up to us to be a model for democracy and thriving economy. Millions of people immigrate here in order to pursue their dreams of creating a better life for themselves. In reality, the United States is still struggling each day to achieve a complete democratic society. America still fails to integrate and protect people of color, the disabled, and the LGBTQ community, which has led to a caste system within a nation, negative social attitudes, and the ramifications that come along with those actions. Through observing the ins and outs of society, we can see that there are still several groups who have not been able to receive all of the just opportunities or treatments they deserve from living in America. One of the reasons for this treatment is the caste system we place on those in these groups. As stated in Stratifications and Inequalities, inequality is the inevitable fact of social life. In all societies, people are evaluated on the basis of some characteristics or set of characteristics and placed into higher or lower ranking groups. People in higher ranking groups tend to receive a disproportionate large share of valued social stuff, such as wealth, power, and respect. People in lower ranking groups tend to receive corresponding smaller share of these social rewards. These rankings are brought upon by society and how they view certain groups. For people of color, if you are not white nor have a lighter skin pigment, you are in the lower end of the caste system. But it is not always only skin color that makes colored people disadvantaged. A majority of the time, those of any type of color were identified as black because of their economic status. Being black meant you were poor, and being white meant you're worthy of others. In the reading What is Whiteness? This type of casting happens to the Europeans when immigrating to America. Although logically they were white, in terms politically, cultural, and economic common sense, they were black because they were the poorest and least respected group in the area. The courts consistently ruled that they were not white despite their skin color because of their cultural and economic standings. For those with disabilities, the caste systems is no different. Since they are viewed as obsolete, they too are at the bottom of the caste system. Many view them as useless and helpless. In the reading Breaking Down Barriers, Ed Roberts says, "The path to my future and to my working was going to be education, totally, because nobody was going to hire me the way I was. There was so much prejudice about disability. People do not want to hire those who they find not to be normal. Being disabled in any way cuts back on what you are able to do, not because you are not capable of doing so, but because others do not allow you to live up to your full potential. In the LGBTQ community, they too are placed in a lower spectrum of the caste system. By being denied their rights to marry, they are not receiving all the just opportunities or treatments they deserve from living in America. Those who live here are under the impression they have equality with everyone else, and by denying their right to marry the one they love, it is just reiterating that they are being treated differently because they are quote-unquote different." For all these groups, it comes to them with no surprise that there is a negative social attitude towards them because they are the marginalized groups. Stereotyping is one of the most common actions society discriminates against these groups. In the way they talk about, think about, and react to those categorized in these groups, society creates and upholds stereotypes. In the reading At the Root of Identity, it is stated, "I believe stereotype threat is a standard predicament of life. It springs from our human power of intersubjectivity, the fact that as members of society, we think a lot about things, including the major groups of identity in society." This type of stereotyping was portrayed in slavery times when all blacks were viewed as savages. At this time period, if one person did something, that meant all the others belonging to that group did/acted the same way. Blacks got to be known as savages because they were portrayed as rebels, aggressive, and animal-like in movies. This stereotype justified killing the blacks because they were saying that they were all savages, meaning they were no better than animals. For people with disabilities, the society stereotypes them as helpless. In Eliza Riley's talk, she explained to us how the social model encourages the stereotype. Those themselves that do not have disabilities feel sorry for those who have and want to help them out constantly. This stereotype is also put on them by the charity model. This model helps those with disabilities, but out of pity. This causes others to look at them the same way. It is opposite for those of the LGBTQ community. The stereotype that they are given has society view them with disgust. Society's stereotypes are that they will ruin the way of life. Since they themselves are not able to have babies when they marry, people think they will mess everything up. All these stereotypes and prejudice causes ramifications in America. Due to the exclusion and unequal treatment of these groups, our society has suffered several consequences and drawbacks. Our country is not able to live up to its standards and expectations our forefathers had set for us in the Constitution and Declarations of Independence. By excluding these groups, we are not allowing all our citizens to have the opportunity to create their American dream, and we are not giving them the chance to be fully integrated in our democratic society. Our society is missing out on a full integration of its citizens. This means less diversity in our government and a disproportionate amount of representatives for certain groups in America. In addition, we are neglecting these groups from its basic human rights and privileges. No one should be subjected to unfair treatment or a subhuman way of life. Society is distributing its resources based on who seems to be the most fit or deserving. By doing so, we are marginalizing and further ostracizing these groups. It is harder for them to be present members of our society due to the social attitudes and structures our community have built up. Another ramification is that our society is trying to become colorblind to people's different color, abilities, etc. By doing this, they are deliberately ignoring the special needs each person has. We are disregarding a group's history, and we are no longer acknowledging the significance and unique contribution of different people. Also, we allow ourselves to become colorblind. We are unknowingly giving people the right to judge others based on other things: height, weight, hair type, etc. It is in human nature to be competitive and categorize people in our society. Therefore, there will always be something that people are going to find categorizable. Our society thinks that this is a way to force them to always finding something to discriminate against and to classify. Our country is still fighting to live up to its promise of being fully democratic and just towards its citizens. Although the United States has made great strides in its process of incorporating and serving everyone, we can still see the progress that still needs to be made through the examination of LGBTQ community, people of color, and people with disabilities. These three groups serve as concrete evidence for what we still need to achieve and strive for in our communities. By simply becoming more aware and educated, we can learn how we can better incorporate people of all kinds in our society. By upholding and accepting attitudes rather than one of discrimination and classification, we can allow for everyone to participate. Knowledge is the key to fully integrating society. We can learn people's histories, we can learn what they hope and aspire for, we can learn how we can be better neighbors, and most of all, we can learn how to accept people for who they are. Once we see the facts and read their stories, we can discard the stereotypes and false racial attitudes. We will actually be able to make a step into the right direction for a fully democratic society that grants justice for all.